The 1960s unleashed a torrent of exploitation films that stirred up controversy, law enforcement crackdowns, and public outrage. These movies, notorious for their graphic content and provocative themes, pushed cinematic boundaries like never before. The extreme violence and shocking imagery led to police raids, arrests of theater owners, and even audiences fainting or vomiting during screenings. Yet, paradoxically, many of these films achieved remarkable financial success. Far beyond the Grindhouse theaters, these exploitation films became infamous for their audacity, prompting bans across entire countries and challenging what was acceptable on screen during that tumultuous decade. At the epicenter of gore filmmaking stands a notorious tale set in Miami, where an unsuspecting Egyptian caterer embarks on a horrifying spree of murder and dismemberment in his quest to resurrect an ancient goddess. This gruesome narrative, directed by Herschel Gordon Lewis, essentially laid the foundation for the splatter genre. Lewis expertly leveraged shock marketing and graphic violence, transforming gore into the main selling point of his film. A revolutionary move despite a visibly low-budget production marked by cheap effects and unpolished acting. The story unfolds with the caterer hypnotizing a wealthy socialite to secure a catering gig at her daughter's party, only to turn the event into a night of ritualistic murder and mutilation. Though the gore lacked realism, scenes like tongues being torn from mouths provoked extreme reactions from audiences, including nausea and shock, to the extent that nurses were even on hand during screenings to assist overwhelmed viewers. Unsurprisingly, the film was met with heavy censorship, banned in countries such as the UK, and subjected to police raids in the United States. Yet, this notoriety only fueled its financial triumph, grossing upwards of $4 million solely within Grindhouse theaters. Critics derided it as amateurish and sickening, but director Lewis embraced the negative reviews as the best form of promotion possible. His groundbreaking work did more than shock. It established an entirely new film genre that continues to influence horror cinema. Two American women go undercover in a Nazi concentration camp that secretly operates as a brothel for officers. Their official mission is to rescue a scientist, but the film quickly descends into relentless scenes of sexual violence, humiliation, and nudity. Directed by Lee Frost, this movie is widely considered the origin point of the Nazi-exploitation subgenre, directly paving the way for later notorious films like Ilsa, She-Wolf of the SS. Censors were outraged, refusing classification in Canada and banning the film outright in the UK, where it later became one of the infamous video nasties during the 1980s. Even in 2002, British censors still refused to certify it, labeling it obscene and exploitative with no redeeming qualities. The film never received an official MPAA rating in the United States and was confined to underground adult theaters. While official box office records are unavailable, it reportedly earned over $2 million from underground rentals alone, yielding nearly pure profit. Feminist groups protested fervently wherever it was screened. In Chicago, activists famously stormed a showing, pouring red paint over the screen, which led to arrests. Despite all the controversy, director Lee Frost expressed no regrets about the film's content. Years later, musician and filmmaker Rob Zombie described it as one of the most disturbing yet defining exploitation films of the entire 1960s. In Psychotic Rage, we follow the disturbing unraveling of a weapons dealer who, after discovering his wife's infidelity, storms out in a fit of rage only to be hit by a car. He wakes up in the hospital blind, mentally unstable, and harboring a violent hatred toward sex. This volatile combination drives him to embark on a horrific rampage, targeting women with a variety of deadly weapons, from knives and blow darts to poisoned roses. Directed by Michael Finley, who used the pseudonym Julian Marsh, the film stars his real-life wife Robera Finley, a prominent figure in underground sleazy cinema at the time. The movie's graphic and psychosexual violence led to it being unrated, and authorities in cities like Boston and Detroit banned it outright. Canadian customs deemed it dangerously psychosexual and seized copies, while in New Jersey, a theater owner was arrested for screening it, but defiantly continued showing the film. Although no official box office records survive, Psychotic Rage gained enough underground success to inspire 2 sequels titled The Curse of Her Flesh and The Kiss of Her Flesh, completing a trilogy. Robert Finley captured the film's ethos succinctly, saying, "We made filth because filth paid the rent." The movie's raw, lurid content mirrored the era's fascination with pushing societal and cinematic boundaries, even at the risk of legal repercussions and censorship. The film that practically invented the white slavery exploitation genre stars Audrey Campbell as a merciless crime boss and dominatrix who harshly punishes women who disobey her. Directed by Joseph Mora, it was made on a shoestring budget using borrowed equipment and shot guerrilla style around New York's Lower East Side. Most of the female cast were strippers or burlesque dancers paid off the books, contributing to its raw and gritty atmosphere. The production was bare bones, just Mora, a cameraman, and post-production dubbing. The brutal portrayal of women's punishment was unlike anything audiences had seen before. Understandably, the film was banned in major cities like Chicago, Boston, and Los Angeles, and was never classified in the UK, where it remains prohibited by British censors. Local churches and feminist groups spearheaded censorship campaigns, but these only fueled the film's popularity. Remarkably, it ran for 40 consecutive weeks in New York's Times Square alone, grossing over $2 million from a modest budget of less than $20,000. This staggering financial success cemented its place as one of the most profitable exploitation films of all time. Long before his famed war epic, The Big Red One, Samuel Fuller crafted independent films that studios refused to touch due to their controversial nature. One such film stars Constance Towers as Kelly, a prostitute who moves to a quiet town and begins working with disabled children. She soon becomes involved with the town's wealthiest man, but when she uncovers a horrifying secret about him, she kills him with a telephone receiver, turning the entire town against her. Upon release, the film was immediately banned in multiple countries and was condemned by the Catholic Legion of Decency. Critics largely disapproved, and theater owners were warned that screening the movie could cost them their licenses. In the UK, it remained banned until 1990. Despite this, the film eventually earned respect. Quentin Tarantino hailed Fuller as the original punk filmmaker, while Martin Scorsese praised the film for being ahead of its time. Constance Towers herself spent decades defending the movie against its detractors. Starring Isabel Sarli, this film centers on a wealthy woman with an insatiable sexual appetite, while her husband struggles to keep up. The provocative themes are unapologetically front and center throughout the movie. Filmed in Argentina during a time of extremely strict state censorship, Fuego was immediately banned in its home country, despite Sarli being one of the nation's biggest film stars. When brought to America, exploitation mogul Harry Novak acquired the film, slapped on an X rating, and marketed it as a Latin American shocker to Grindhouse audiences. Notably, John Waters praised Fuego, ranking it among his top 10 trash masterpieces. Years later, Isabel Sarli received official recognition as a national treasure by the Argentine government, even appointed ambassador of popular culture. Remarkably, she never voiced any negativity toward the very censors who tried to end her career. Nevertheless, the film remained banned in Argentina, Brazil, Spain, and parts of the United States. As a consequence, Sarli was blacklisted across much of Latin America. Russ Meyer's Vixen stands out as a pioneering exploitation film that broke new ground in the 1960s. This Canadian woman with no inhibitions seduces everyone she encounters, her husband's fishing buddies, a visiting couple, even her own brother. Its provocative content, including interracial sex scenes, led to widespread bans across cities such as Dallas, Miami, and Boston. One theater owner even faced arrest for showing the film. Despite the heavy censorship, Vixen achieved remarkable commercial success, grossing over $8 million at the box office and running for nearly a year in Los Angeles theaters. Its notoriety was so significant that it became the subject of a 1969 U.S. Senate obscenity investigation, with the film explicitly named during the hearings. Russ Meyer embraced the controversy, leveraging it as a major marketing tool. He later remarked that the success of Vixen made him financially independent enough to reject the demands of mainstream Hollywood studios. Moreover, the film played a crucial role in challenging and reshaping obscenity laws, expanding the boundaries of what was permissible on American screens. One of the most bizarre and surreal exploitation films of the 1960s centers around a mad scientist who kidnaps couples caught in intimate moments, siphoning their sexual energy to fuel his immortality experiments. The film's main creature is essentially just a man in a cheap rubber Bigfoot costume, underscoring its low-budget, campy nature. Shot in Buenos Aires, the cast consisted mostly of adult film actors and friends of the filmmakers. Exploitation distributor Harry Novak acquired the rights, dubbed the film into English, and marketed it as a wild horror sex shocker for Grindhouse audiences. Naturally, it faced bans in Argentina and was seized by Canadian customs officials. However, Novak's savvy understanding of his niche audience meant that the film thrived underground in the US. Despite repeated theater removals over explicit scenes, each seizure only boosted its cult status and notoriety, cementing its place as a uniquely absurd chapter in exploitation cinema history. Claimed to be a sequel to the famous 18th century erotic novel Fanny Hill, this film tells the story of Fanny Hill's daughter arriving in Victorian London to continue her mother's notorious legacy. The narrative is filled with prostitutes, corsets, a lesbian dream sequence, and a disturbing character who grooms women for high-class debauchery. Distributed by Box Office International under the guise of a refined historical romance, theater owners were blindsided when they actually saw the explicit content. This led to police raids charging theaters with obscenity offenses in multiple cities, including Chicago, Philadelphia, and Los Angeles, with several theater owners being arrested. The British Board of Film Classification refused even to consider licensing the film, effectively banning it in the UK. Nonetheless, it survived through drive-in theaters and underground channels, gradually achieving a cult status among niche audiences who appreciated its transgressive approach. Starting off as a gritty detective story set against the backdrop of New York, this film quickly devolves into an overt sexploitation spectacle. The plot follows a detective on the trail of a serial killer who is targeting prostitutes. While this premise sounds relatively straightforward, the film diverges sharply into an array of striptease sequences and unsettling sadomasochistic club scenes. Directed by Anton Holden and bankrolled by a real strip club owner, the production was shot sporadically, timed with the club owner's availability. Despite the chaotic structure, the acting surpasses expectations, with dialogue and suspense crafted to a commendable level. Even the performances during the stripping scenes were filmed with a certain visual appeal. Holden never directed another film like this, and instead pursued a career in sound editing. Released independently along the notorious 42nd Street Grindhouse circuit, the film grossed about $600,000 in cash. However, Ohio, Illinois, and Utah censorship boards outright refused to screen it due to its explicit violence against women. Its promotional poster was also banned for being excessively suggestive, illustrating the censorship challenges faced by exploitation films that blurred the lines between genre conventions and adult content. The exploitation films of the 1960s stand as a vivid reflection of an era marked by cinematic daring and societal friction. Through their relentless shock value, explicit violence, and bold storytelling, these films not only captivated audiences, but also provoked controversy, challenged conventions, and ultimately left an indelible mark on film history. Their legacy endures as a testament to the power of provocative art to both unsettle and influence culture. The 1960s saw a surge of exploitation films that stirred chaos and controversy, provoking law enforcement to raid theaters, leading to arrests and censorship, while simultaneously drawing shock and disgust from audiences, some of whom literally fled or became physically ill during screenings. Remarkably, many of these films achieved substantial financial success despite, or perhaps because of, their notoriety. Far surpassing typical Grindhouse fare, these movies were so extreme and violent that entire countries imposed outright bans, their content too graphic even for the most depraved cinemas. At the epicenter of gore cinema was a film depicting an Egyptian caterer in Miami who commits ritualistic murders and dismembers bodies to resurrect an ancient goddess. Directed by Herschel Gordon Lewis, this pioneering splatter film traded polish for shock value, relying on grotesque special effects and low-budget filmmaking. Despite, or because of, its crude execution and graphic gore, it sparked widespread bans, police-supervised screenings, and shock marketing campaigns. Audiences and critics alike dismissed it as amateurish and disgusting, yet it grossed millions and laid the foundation for an entirely new genre. The Nazi-exploitation subgenre was introduced through a bleak tale of two American women infiltrating a Nazi camp disguised as a brothel, directed by Lee Frost. Renowned for its explicit depiction of sexual violence and degradation, the film faced vehement censorship worldwide, including bans in the UK and Canada. Though it never garnered an official rating in the United States, it thrived underground, generating significant profits and sparking fierce feminist protest. Its impact reverberated decades later, hailed by figures like Rob Zombie as a defining exploitation classic. Michael Finley's psychosexual thriller told of a blinded, unstable weapons dealer who unleashes violent rage on women, introducing new extremes to on-screen brutality. Banned in multiple cities and seized by customs officials, the film nevertheless spawned a profitable trilogy, embodying the unabashed sleaze ethos that funded such underground projects. As co-star Robera Finley remarked, they made filth because filth paid the rent. Audrey Campbell's portrayal of a domineering crime boss in a pioneering white slavery exploitation film shocked audiences with its raw and punishing treatment of women. Shot guerrilla style on a shoestring budget in New York's Lower East Side, it was banned in numerous cities and caught the ire of churches and feminist groups, yet thrived commercially with extended runs and a major profit margin. Samuel Fuller's scandalous tale of a prostitute turned pariah, played by Constance Towers, faced international bans and moral outrage upon release. Rejected by influential censorship bodies and inaccessible in the UK for decades, it later earned praise from directors like Tarantino and Scorsese, cementing its place as a bold cinematic statement ahead of its time. Fuego, starring Isabel Sarli as a woman overwhelmed by sexual desire, faced severe censorship in Argentina, the birthplace of its production, leading to bans throughout Latin America and parts of the United States. Despite the repression, it attracted cult status and accolades from figures such as John Waters, while Sarli herself endured blacklisting yet remained diplomatically uncritical of the authorities who censored her work. Russ Meyer's Vixen shattered taboos with its unrestrained portrayal of sexuality, interracial encounters, and provocative family relations. Earning an X rating yet achieving mainstream box office triumph, it ignited Senate investigations and obscenity trials, ultimately shaping evolving standards of content acceptability in American cinema. Meyer proudly credited the film's controversy as empowering him to defy Hollywood norms. One of the decade's oddest entries involved a mad scientist harvesting sexual energy from captive couples to fuel immortality experiments, featuring a comically low-budget Bigfoot monster. Despite bans and custom seizures, this absurd exploitation flick earned underground success, bolstered by savvy distribution and cult curiosity. A lurid Victorian-era film, loosely tied to the infamous Fanny Hill novel though disregardful of the source material, offered a lurid tableau of high society debauchery. Rejected as obscene and raided by police across multiple cities, it survived through underground circuits and drive-in theaters, securing a secret cult following. A gritty New York detective story morphing into full-blown sexploitation explored violence against women and sadomasochistic subcultures. With surprisingly effective performances and solid suspense, It still faced censorship bans due to its graphic content and provocative imagery, emblematic of exploitation cinema's blurred boundaries. These exploitation films from the 1960s remain emblematic of a daring cinematic era that challenged societal limits through sensational storytelling, shock imagery, and unflinching portrayals of taboo subjects. Their audacity carved new genres and left an indelible impact on the film industry's evolution. If this dive into the shocking, controversial world of 1960s exploitation films fascinated you, be sure to subscribe for more insightful content. Don't forget to like, comment, and share if you found this exploration compelling.